Okay, I guess I'll do the last one right here. See my new lights. You know, I could title this one, No Justice for the Pig. The pig that was dumped. I read that story. I linked it already, shared it, I'll put it all up tonight. And it was interesting because they said that was the pig. I Googled somebody dumped a pig, and then there was one in 2015. That was the month where the pig went missing. The one I put up. 2017. And the way the animal control said, well, somebody might have fell out of a truck at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then they said, like, if nobody picks it up, then we'll find a home for it. You know, my kids are involved in animal cruelty. This is why I would say no justice for the pig. They just had another case. And I think sometimes, even my kids, they pursue cases of animal cruelty with dogs, animals. My one daughter even got a subpoena and all. But I think it was one case of an elderly lady, and she had many animals, but they were not properly taken care of. But you knew she loved the animals, like my friend Pops, who passed away. He had the dogs who were producing, kittens all over, lived by the courthouse, and I'd help him feed those animals. If people investigated Pops at that time, you could have said, oh yeah, it's unliving. And they pursued charges against people, and even when somebody went to jail for like a few years for abusing their dog, or maybe killed it. And I actually thought it was strange because those are people that care for their animals, some of them, like an old lady that's overwhelmed. And why would she have so many? And she's trying to take care of them. But that's a lot different than what we discussed today. And I thought it was strange that the animal control said, not if we found out if somebody dumped this animal, which they did. Now the seriousness, I was trying to think of the name, the Toomey case. Why bring up that case again? I was in that trailer park. I took George to visit his dad about a week ago. Lives in the trailer park, the Toomey case. My daughter lives in that trailer park. Brother Dave lives over there. But when the media reported, those of you that are local media and local citizens, there's been a long-standing level of terrible performance in this PD with the 911 calls that some of them they didn't respond to. There was a military man on the base years ago, and I guess he was going to get stationed somewhere else, and they finally called the local media. But it was a attempted break-in on a house on Padre Island. They called, I think for an hour, a couple of calls. Somebody was at the door. And then this was when Chief Simpson was the chief. And I think it took an hour after calling 911 on a call that could have been a serious call. And then Simpson said, well, the guys were busy that night. But I could tell from many of the cases, like the Toomey case, in a normal city, what happened in the Toomey case was a man in that trailer park was calling the cops throughout the day that there was some type of a disturbance with him and a neighbor in that trailer park. And Toomey case became popular because they finally showed the pictures how the cops beat the shit out of Toomey. But what happened, he was trying to contact the cops throughout the day, called them 5 times, multiple times. And the cops finally told him, if you call us again, we're going to arrest you. Now that man was calling about a disturbance, and they didn't want to respond. Then he shot and killed people in that trailer park. Then they shut up. This became famous. Again, Chief Simpson was the chief at the time. Because they finally released the pictures of Mr. Toomey. And they beat the shit. Ccpd beat the shit out of Mr. Toomey. And then they played it off like, well, our guys were angry. No, like because of the shooting. They were angry because they told them, don't fucking call anymore. We're going to arrest you, Toomey. And then it led to deaths. And the paper reported they brought Mr. Toomey to an undisclosed location. Now, any city, when you realize they might have brought him to some holding house where they beat people, that's what the paper reported on that. No final, what about what happened there? No final resolution, and the Sun was still trying to get resolution on that. And in a normal city, that comes out in the media, that comes out in the paper. That's what you think in this city. Oh, we don't have any of that because there's not an accountability here. A few years ago, I laughed. It wasn't a serious thing. I laughed because the official policy for the CCPD was when you had what we call 1050 major, 1050 minor. Those are 10 codes for car wrecks. So we went to a lot of those. But then they had an official policy in the city that the CCPD would not respond to minor accidents. And when that came out, I laughed. I said, we have to be the only city in the U.S. that would have that policy. I immediately knew, because you have to, for the insurance purposes, they need a police report to see who's at fault. And they were not going to all of those. Now, eventually that changed. Markle changed that. But they gave the citizens so we could release more manpower. I knew that was a joke. And as I saw that, I said, man, there's a substandard thing going on here. There's something going on where, like normal cities, none of them, as far as I knew, would ever have a policy like that. Finally, it was changed. And the chief had said, I remember, he said on the media, which wasn't true. He said, well, it wasn't helping in our responses. No, the insurance companies, you couldn't settle any of those claims because there was no police report. Even if it was a fender bender, you have to have a report. And so when I saw all this over years and years, I thought, oh, there's a problem with this department. More than normal departments. Just in the function of it. Just in the basic function of it. And so when I discussed and talked about those over the years, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're going to, no, you got a systemic problem here. And what this community has done, for as long as I lived here, since '92, I gave a few other cases where I couldn't get a cop when my daughter's vehicle was vandalized. Call. Her neon was vandalized, couldn't get one, I called multiple times throughout the day. Finally went to the main headquarters. I told these already. And I was in the Ccpd main headquarters downtown. At that time, you could walk in the front door. It is now closed. And I called again. It was like on a Sunday. But I called again from inside. Now, I was calling all day, multiple times. They didn't tell me, we'll arrest you if you try to get us to perform our jobs like they did to Mr. Toomey, which led to death. And then I called from inside the main station. I said, I'm calling all day to try and get an officer because my daughter's vehicle was vandalized. And I can't get a cop. And I went to the Kmart, and then the lady on the phone said, the PD I'm talking to. I said, where are you now? I said, I'm in your station. I'm at the central headquarters of CCPD. And then after about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, a lady came out from the back. I thought, oh, there's a problem here in this city. There's a problem in this city. And even the mayor, Dan McQueen, who's infamous because of what happened in our local political scenario, but he blurred it out because the truth comes out when people are mad. And he even blurted out at one of his press conferences or whatever, Dan McQueen resigned, he was mayor for like a month. And he said, and plus, they don't respond to 911 calls here. And then he later, like a few days later, had to change that. They might have targeted him. That happened. Believe me, that happens. Believe me, that happens. And I see all this. I see all the public. Mr. Markle, you said you were going to do a poll. This was about 8 months ago. You were going to do a poll, a mail-out poll, to the citizens to see how they felt about policing. And you never released that. You never released that poll. We ask about the Fuqua death, the murder. Fuqua, who went to school with my daughter in Flower Bluff, was coming back and he was shot. Multiple times his vehicle was shot and he was shot and killed. And the family wanted resolution to that. And when I see some of these other things that these guys have been involved in over the years, I'm not thinking it's just, incompetence is certainly part of it. My friends, Roger, who just died, he had criminal, he could have had multiple criminal complaints against PD. Things that really crossed the line in other areas that I've discussed. And I've had a lot of friends like that. They were scared shitless. And they told me time after time, they will beat our asses, John. They will come after us. And some of them, that was documented. And you would have thought the PD would have been able, knowing that their own cops had targeted people, particularly homeless. You thought there would have been a policy, but then they'd show up the next day at the residence, the same officer. In civilian society, what you do is you get a restraining order. Like if somebody is beating somebody up, you get a restraining order. As a matter of fact, that same cop used to get restraining orders on people. The same cop. Because he beat the shit out of so many people. My sweet dear friend who I mentioned, I won't give her name, but I remember when I started, and she's good friends with one of the CCPD officers, not the pigs in the blanket thing, another one. She said, "Oh no, John, he'll beat the fuck out of you, John." She didn't say that. Way. So, "Oh no, she said, "Oh no, he regularly will tell his victims, CCPD, still rode the top of the ranks of this fucking department." She said, "No, he'll go and tell the guys," and then she told me he told this one, he told that one, and he did it to the others. "I'll go take my uniform off right now and I'll come back and beat the fuck out of you," is what he did to various victims. And when it came to the knowledge of the chief, still went on. In the normal city, those guys are held accountable for those things. And then to show up at those same people's residence, at least one I know, after you give them like a Toomey beating. One of my friends got a beating like Toomey. According to the description from him and others, he looked like Toomey. Got his ass kicked so bad by a cop, not an arrest, none of that. And then we want to put more money in. Just keep pumping money in. The arrogance of that case I spoke of earlier. The arrogance to know that everybody in that neighborhood knew. The arrogance to know. And do you know how that affects the average citizen that then is aware? And I bet his sweet wife, nice people, I met him in the normal way you would meet people, and probably had difficulty in a past marriage, things that I don't know everything. I met him a few times. She's probably like anybody else and thinks, "Oh, I didn't know these things." And what that instills in the citizens that are then aware, and then say, "John," and I've had multiple friends that said, because I used to tell them over the years, "Go make a report. This happened, this happened." Danny Gill, who died, he had instances, same types of things. Sometimes they would be like he'd laugh about them. But what it instilled in these guys, and 3 are dead now, really. Huey, Danny, Roger, others have died, but and there's some still alive that had a lot of this. And the sweet Christian lady friend of mine said, "No, John, no, that's how he does it here. The particular officer, he goes and puts his civilian clothes on, then he comes and beats the fuck out of the person." I used to thinking, this was years of this. And then when I see them like on TV and talking about, I saw Kirk Stowers again the other day, just watching the news. I guess he's got to be the son of my former city manager. And then, "Oh, we're doing a good job with it," and I think, oh, gets me mad. It would be like me parading my friends who had a history of crime, and then say, "Quick, dress up in some police uniforms, real quick, get on TV, We're out here helping you guys. And what do they do when people report? Not only do they try to go after them, this consumes their time when they're supposed to be solving the Fuqua case. Multiple shots, the kid was coming back, and there's still no resolution as far as I know. I read the news every day. And this chief is still the chief here. This chief is still the chief here. And he was in the ranks all these years, kind of came up with these guys. And a huge problem, okay?